Welcome back to Man vs. Mob. There is a massive reshuffling taking place right now, and it goes by a lot of different names. And I've heard the fifth paradigm, the fourth turning, the third era, the fourth industrial revolution, um, the second machine age, the third era. There's about 1,000 different names for all these different intersecting phenomenon, but I think that it's pretty clear that it's unsettling and confusing, and it might give you the impression that everything is collapsing and that nothing seems to make sense. But that's the effect of everything that we've taken for granted coming under scrutiny or changing basically at the same time, and the immensely unsettling nature of that, of living through that. I guess one of the comforts that you can get out of it is it's not the first time that's happened, and it's a somewhat repeating phenomenon. And we can look back at past past dislocation, cultural, technological, geopolitical dislocation that's occurred. I think that it just makes it very difficult to plan. It's like everything is simultaneously unanchored. Generally, when you're trying to figure your life out and figure out the direction that you're going and plan for the future and hope for the future, you want something to be sort of locked down so that you can then plan around that. But everything is up in the air right now. Everything simultaneously is up in the air. So, for example, if you're trying to uh, plot the course of your life after, if you're fortunate enough to go to college, you graduated from college, and you're trying to figure, okay, well, what am I going to do with my life? Generally, you're going to want to figure out either where you're going to live, what your job is going to be, um, what part of the country you're going to be in, or city you're going to be near. Something you're going to need some piece of information that you can then sort of plan around. But if it's all free floating at the same time, it becomes very difficult to plan. And put that at a societal level, amp it up, and that's what everyone's dealing with. I suppose there's a comfort in the fact that everyone is equally as confused. Um, Even the people who are acting like they know what's going on right now, they're trying to. They might have more information, but it's immensely complex. And when one event happens, it shifts the other events that follow. So there's like infinite timelines coming out of every single moment and every single turn of events, and they every single thing that occurs shapes all of the options after it. So it makes it very difficult when so many impactful things are occurring. Um, Part of what makes me talk about this right now is I just finished a book by Peter Zeihan called Disunited Nations, and seriously worth looking into. But he talks about the changing geopolitical landscape, and I've spent a lot of time talking about the changing technological landscape. But first of all, he did a phenomenal job of explaining how, as the United States retreats from the global order, the consistency of the last 70 years is pretty much going to evaporate, and the countries of the world are now going to have to figure out how to sort of go at it alone and reshape regional power balances and find their place in the world. The United States is kind of withdrawing inward a bit, and the United States global presence has basically allowed other countries access to markets, and we've floated a global currency in the United States, and we generally provided maritime and physical security for the countries of the world. I'm not saying that we didn't get involved with all these different military misadventures all over the world with their military industrial complex as well. But that was kind of like the flip side of this. You realize that everything has a trade-off. There's generally good and bad paired together, and it's hard to divorce them. So it gets pretty nuanced. But I thought this was a really interesting addition to what I've been thinking about, because it just layers the geopolitical and the technological at the same time. And one of the biggest, most fascinating revelations of the book was that China is not nearly as strong of a country as people are pretending that it is. And Peter Zeihan was saying that it would be pretty amazing if China even remained as a nation within the next 10 years, because there are so many different pressures, uh, political pressures, dissident groups within China that are being suppressed, and neighboring nations that all basically hate China, and the way that they've grown their economy so rapidly, and how they've been reliant on the global order that the United States has been at the head of for their prosperity, and then um, numerous other reasons. But I thought that was fascinating, because I had been thinking that China was for sure going to be, um, the runaway superpower, the Chinese century, as they're aiming at. And then he throws this idea out there that it's actually unlikely that China is even really going to um, maintain its grip as a country. So, I don't know how, I don't know if I should take that to heart. I generally try to just incorporate this new information with a grain of salt, and I don't know, try to work it into what I already know, but not put full faith in it. But I thought that was fascinating. And he also talks about how the United States, this is one of the last chapters of the book, the United States is dealing with its retreat from the world, but it's dealing with its domestic issues at the same time. And he talks about the two political parties, and he talks about how both of them have coalitions. And the Republican coalition, he says, has typically been pretty easy to maintain, but it's consisted of about 6 factions. And one of the factions is the evangelicals. Another one of them are the pro-life. Then you have the business community, like under Reagan. You have the national security people. You have the fiscal policy people, and then you have the populists. And each one has sort of had their turn in the spotlight under a different administration. It kind of rotates, and you get these reshufflings of the party structure. So different factions will switch between the Democrats and the Republicans, and different factions will be prominent at different points in time. But we're dealing with a major reshuffling right now. And so under Reagan, as I had said before, there was the business community that was the faction that was most in charge. And then under George Bush, there were the evangelicals that were given prominence. And then with Trump, it was the populists. And the other factions previously didn't really know much about what the populists believed or what they wanted, because it's kind of a hodgepodge. It's like a potpourri of different groups. And so some of them might be like border security people, some of them might be anti-Wall Street people, some of them racists, various different groups in the populist category. And all of a sudden they're in the spotlight, and they're the face of the Republican Party. But the same thing is happening in the Democratic Party right now, where the populists have surged forward. And Peter Zeihan talks about how the last 15 years for the Democrats have been about trying to build a coalition around sort of the rainbow identity, the rainbow coalition of all these different minority groups. And the mistake that they've made is that they have effectively lost um, sort of lost touch with the working class, and they also forget that there are still massive numbers of white men that exist in rural places and across the country. Not every state has the demographics of California. And although he's not saying that you have to pander to white men, you are alienated. The Democratic Party has alienated the working class and white men, and is paying the price for that in some of the recent elections and politics. And it was an interesting take, I thought. So we'll see where we go from here, but everything is shaping everything else. And I don't know what universe we're ultimately going to end up with, but as I've said probably 50 times, we need to start shaping the world that we're going to emerge into, and planning and thinking about what we want, because change is inevitable. It's going to happen, but we can shift the course of that change into channels and avenues of our preference. So anyway, what does the reshuffling mean to you? And in what ways do you look forward to or fear this reshuffling? And in what ways do you think it gives you um, opportunities? And in what ways does it set you back? Let me know what you think.